Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. Currently, we're in Isaiah chapter 45. And as I said, this is a rich chapter here, worthy of taking a slow crawl through. Because I think there's a couple of things that's intersecting in this chapter that I want to address. And so let's get into it. And let's get into it. Well, first of all, I have to share my screen. Let's see here. Here we go. So Isaiah 45. Oh, I got to change my. Oh, here we go. All right. Talking about not being prepared. Not being prepared here. Okay. I thought I did this. All right. We're going to pick it up at verse number 11. And and again, God is declaring a couple of things. We talked about, and I think this is important, by the way, to go back and just read just a couple of scriptures here. Here we go, verse 28, when he says, "Who says to Cyrus, my shepherd, he will fulfill all my pleasure, and says to Jerusalem, she will be rebuilt, and of the temple, its foundations will be laid." And the reason why I'm reading that is because it's going to go to what I'm getting ready to get into in this study, and that is, why do I believe in God? And so there's a couple of things I want to kind of throw in as a thought. Why do I believe in God? And why do I do not believe that science has disproved God, the existence of God, or his claims? Now that's going to be important. We're going to get into that, God's claim, because science says, or I'm going to even correct myself. There are some people who says that science say. What I have found, and I want to be careful about this, because I'm going to bring science into this discussion. Where does science come into? And I think as sort of a history, we need to understand why science has bloomed so. So when I say science, I'm talking about the discipline of it, the study of it. What I'm not talking about is scientific evidence. We live in a world now, atheism is growing. They are renouncing Christianity and God in favor of humanism. And a part of humanism is science. So what they're going to say is, we follow the evidence. And the evidence, there is no evidence of God. We'll come back to that statement, because I totally disagree. So when I say, because I dealt with this in another video in dealing with some of that particular statement, how evolution disproves God. I'll get in that in a moment, because I think it's important here. I think it's important because the ideology of atheism, and then their science, their belief in science, is that there is no God. So they approach the whole subject as, there is no God. Now, if you approach that, let me back up for a moment, because one of the what is interesting when you kind of study, let's say, Greek philosophy, and Roman and Greek philosophy was built upon so they had their culture that was the search of wisdom, discussions of wisdom. And they would talk about wisdom, right? They would deal with wisdom. Now here's the interesting thing here. when they would talk about wisdom or the search of wisdom. Roman, even though they talked about wisdom and philosophy, was also pagan. That they had their pagan rituals, their pagan beliefs, their pagan gods. So that's important. Okay, so now we spring forward. We come to somewhere around the neighborhood of, I'm going to say the 1800s, and something changed, right? Which you have the birth of humanism. But it wasn't just the birth of humanism that you see that sprung during this time. For example, Christian Scientists, Jehovah Witnesses, Mormonism, and then as well as Darwin or evolution. It's not a coincidence that all of these sprung at the same time. And basically, it was a rebellion against the kind of established religion. And I have to say, to the established religion's shame. And then there's a whole history as to why we got there, which I'm not going to explore. Catholicism, Eastern Orthodox, certainly did its damage to the point Christendom has never recovered from the damage that Catholicism has done. Bad theology, just paganism mixed in, a lot of stuff, okay? Politics, marrying, religion, and the constant fight between the Pope and the King. I mean, it was, So when we get to the 18th century now, people begin to, with the the explosion of the industrial age. Also, people started thinking. Yeah, people started thinking, like, wait a minute, what the Pope is saying, what religion is saying, what denominations are saying, that doesn't add up. And they were right. But the problem is that in rejecting this, they kind of rejected God in favor of humanism. And thus, Darwinism became sort of a hero because, hey, guess what? We can have existence scientifically without God? Count me in. Now, they would say, well, we followed the evidence. But just stop and think about some of the things that science says. Okay? You stop and you think about, they replaced God, and let me show you something. So let's look at this. Verse 11. This is what the Lord, the Holy One of Israel, and its Maker says, ask me what is to happen to my sons, and instruct me about the works of my hands. I made the earth and created man on it. It was my hands that stretched out the heavens, and I commanded all of their hosts. Now just think about that for a minute. Let me read that again. This is God speaking. I made the earth. I created man on it. It was my hands that stretched out the heavens, and I commanded all their hosts. So here's God saying, I made this. Now, I'm not for sure, because I haven't really studied, so that's my ignorance. I am not sure that any other religion, any other God has made this declaration. I'm just not sure. But what I do know is the God of the Bible has. So when I look at atheists today, they rebel most against this God. Okay? Most against this God. When you think about what's called the deconstructing from Christianity movement, an ex-Christian to an atheist, they are rebelling against this God, which is, I'll get back to that later, because remember, he is God that you're rebelling against. And even though they call themselves atheists, they spend a lot of time trying to dismantle these statements, this thought here. But when we kind of go back to the rise of humanism. So what took place is that humanism kind of formed as to say, let me exist without God. Let's destroy the God of the Bible. And then fairness, probably any God. Let's destroy any God, right? So let's destroy any God. So if you say that there is no God, right? So what are you rebelling against? Well, it's not just the fact that you're rebelling against the existence of God, right? In other words, if I say, I don't believe in Putin, Vladimir Putin, right? Well, in some respect, he doesn't directly affect me. He could, but not directly. So regardless of what he's doing, and he's doing some evil stuff, right? I don't care because he doesn't affect me. But God directly affects us because now you have God through his commandments, which they don't like. Let's back up for a moment. Here you have this statement where God says, I made earth, right? I created man on earth. So now this is either a lie. So in this right here, this verse 12 refutes the claims of evolution, right? It refutes the claims of evolution. Listen what he says. I made the earth and created man on the earth. It was my hands that stretched out the heavens, and I commanded all their hosts. Think about that for a moment. Think about that for a moment. And I'm going to do something, like I say, really different here. Really different. Because I want you to see this statement here that they said, well, let me go back to this here. Look at this, my background picture here. God made this earth right here, but that's not what I want to do. I want to go to something even more grand here. Because this is so when we talk about all of the, all right, here we go. So let's go now. Remember, he says, I made the earth. All right. So look at these pictures here. I made the earth. And then he says, I made man on the earth. Let me get to my picture here because I just did a video on this. I made man on the earth. And then he says, I made the heavens, right? I made the heavens. I made the universe. I just wanted to show you those pictures here. Okay? Now, so keep that in mind. God makes the universe. God makes the earth. He makes all of our galaxies. And then he makes man on the earth. Now, the reason I'm showing this picture is because evolution now says that, I want you to keep that picture in mind, and I want to go back to, I want to go back, so I want you to keep that picture in mind because he said evolution now says that God didn't create that natural selection created this, that the Big Bang created this, right? Let me show you a picture of the Big Bang here. Look at that picture, the Big Bang. So if you look at this picture right here, this is what their science now is saying, that the creation started from this bang, an explosion, 14 billion years ago. And then as it flung all of the galaxies, all of the whatever they want to call it, right? 14 billion years. Then you come to about 4 billion years ago, and the earth is now cooling, and then the earth becomes, after it cools down, it took about a couple of 100 million years for this lifeless rock, and during this time it was pummeled by all of this space rock. Now I want you to understand this. This is what an actual atheist said in defense of science. So after about 200 years, he says life begins to form that eventually forms this and makes this, right? Amongst all of these planets, right? Okay, amongst all these planets. And that's amazing, right? That's astounding. Now we can get into when he says, I made man. So he also says that we come from this, these microbes that show up about 3 billion years ago. Then we jump some time, and then here's a fish in the water. I think it's the fossil, but fish in the water. Give it some more time, and then we start to crawl out of the water. This is a salamander, believed to show up around 340 million years ago. And then this is some kind of land animal that shows up about 63 million ago, according to their time. And then, of course, there is the primates that show up 4 million years ago. And then this one, Homo erectus, shows up about 1.8 million ago. And we come from that. Now, why am I showing you all of that? Look at all these pictures here. This is what we come from, right? Now, why am I showing you all of this, taking all this time here? Because that is in direct contradiction to what God has said, right? Direct contradiction. In other words, God said he made man. Okay? He made man. All right? Now, watch this. I'm going to go back to my picture one quickly. Look at verse 12 again. And he says, I made the earth and created man on it. It was my hands that stretched out the heavens. Okay? And I commanded all their hosts. So the question is, who's right? See, who's right? Right? Who? God made a statement. Scientists, evolutionists, I want to say biochemists. No, that's not that's the right word, but biological evolutionists. Okay, but I don't know if that's the right word. They claim pretty much that all what we see came from natural processes. Natural processes. God says, I know I created all of this. Heavens, earth, man, everything. I created this. So now there is a conflict. Now, scientists will say that man's belief is foolish. Man's belief is nonsense, crazy, stupid. Yeah, they do say that. One guy who, I'm going to say he's probably more diplomatic, he says, I don't know if he's the only one who said it or started it, but they pretty much say, well, okay, fine, your religion. When we were infants, so you go back in time, when we were infants, yeah, we needed that God stuff, religion stuff. But now that we have science, we don't need God, we don't need the thought of God, we don't need religion. And I want to come back and deal with that. Like I say, I want to do a slow crawl for this because, no, they don't make a case at all. And I'm going to give my opinion on that. All right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. I'll see you in the next study.